Hello, class, and welcome. This is going to be our 10-minute lecture video. I'm going to cover various topics from our textbook. So welcome to Introduction to Psychology. I want to encourage you to take notes during this lecture. I also suggest that you take advantage of this pre-recorded video. You can record it. You can rewind it. You can pause it as much as you need to so that you can summarize. Another tip I like to give before we get started is one of my stats teachers. One thing that he taught us that has helped us tremendously was that when you're listening to a video lecture, you should have a notebook and still handwrite your notes. Something about writing it down, it just makes the information, it feels like you're actually soaking in all the information versus just listening. You're just listening, you think you're getting it, but when you write it down, it just helps it connect the learning. So give that a try. All right, let's begin. So first, we'll start with what is psychology. So if you have already started some of your readings, you may have a sense of it now, but while the formal definition of psychology has evolved over time, today we can safely call it a science of behavior and mental processes. You will see me look off a little bit to my notes. But just telling you that's what's going on. All right, psychology is a scientific study of the mind and behavior. So psychologists use the scientific method to acquire knowledge. To apply the scientific method, a researcher has a question about how or why something has happened, and then they'll propose a tentative explanation on why they think that happened, which is called a hypothesis. And the hypothesis should fit into the context of the scientific theory. So the researcher then makes observations to carry out the experiment to test the validity of the hypothesis. Those results could then possibly be published at research conferences, just publications, and so that others can replicate and build on those results. And that is one of the things that I admire the most about our field in psychology is the fact that we are research based. So I'm coming with as much facts as possible, not feelings, not opinions. Whatever information we're coming with, we're trying to come with the facts, things that we've studied and have been possibly proven. Right. And so it was not until the late 1800s that psychology became accepted as its own academic discipline. So before that time, the workings of the mind was considered under philosophy. So that's a fun fact for you. So psychologists use the scientific method, again, as we mentioned, to kind of acquire knowledge, propose hypotheses, and test them through observations and experiments. The scientific method relies on measurable data, right? So it has to be things that we can measure. So, for example, we can't measure a bird's happiness. We can measure their brain state, right, but not their happiness. So there's barriers there. There's barriers there of what we can and can research. And this helps us to understand behaviors. However, it does have limitations, which we could talk about on a separate lecture. Right, so the research does have some limitations, right, depending on what kind of study it is. Now, psychology majors normally are just looking to develop their critical thinking skills, learning to evaluate information, and gain insights into human behavior. There are some famous psychology majors. One of them the top one that I saw was Mark Zuckerberg, which created Facebook, Meta now. So he is also a psychology major. So just think about that. People understanding the processes, the thought process of people and trying to accommodate that in some way. And education in psychology teaches you how to critically think and communicate effectively. One thing I've always said about psychology that I enjoy is the fact that each time I take a course, I'm in the course, of course, of course, to learn the materials and develop my knowledge of just psychology in general, but I always end up walking away with learning something about myself as well. So you're learning about others, but you're also going to learn about yourself. And that, I think, is beautiful, because we should always continue to grow and always seek to be better. So I want you to pause for a moment here, and we'll pause for just a brief moment. And I want you to ponder on these questions. What are some potential biases that can influence your critical thinking, and how can you overcome them? So, what are some potential biases that can influence your critical thinking, and how can you overcome them? So, we'll pause for a moment there. All right. The next question I want you to just ponder on during this lecture is, what psychology questions are you most interested in? Try to think of maybe 2 or 3. What are some things you're most interested in learning about psychology? I'll give you an example. For me, in the beginning stages, I was very curious about the research process. Like, what's step 1 if you're about to complete research? What's step 2? What's step 3? Like, I wanted to know the way that it was laid out. Yeah. That actually leads me to the next point in our lecture today, is actually about research. So research is the backbone of psychology. It helps us to separate fact from opinion and make informed decisions, right? So research helps us understand human behavior and mental processes. It informs us of public policy and some personal decisions. It allows scientists to test theories, to refine them, and to discard them or modify them if they don't hold up. Even if you are a virtual student of FSU, we do have research projects that are going on all the time. There's several conferences, so definitely let me know if you're interested, and I can connect you to some of the other professors, excuse me, that are actively completing research. Maybe they have something that you're interested in, and you can gain some experience in that if you like. There's different approaches to research. There may be a survey to collect information. I've done that plenty of times in my background in corporate America, just having to meet with people face to face and ask them some questions, survey questions face to face, or it will be an online survey where I can gather information from them. It's just a quick way to gather data. Right. And then the limitation, just quick example on that could be, what if they aren't being truly honest? What if they aren't being truly honest in the face-to-face setting or even the online setting? Then, the data, the information you're receiving is not fully accurate, right? Because they're not being fully transparent. So those are things you may experience. Other types of research, of course, can be just observing behavior in a natural setting. It could be a clinical or case study. There's different experiments. When you're thinking of research, you definitely want to have ethics top of mind. So we definitely want to be ethical in what you're doing. There's several principles that we have to ensure are being followed. So I want you to ponder on this question. I know that was brief on research, but what are some limitations that you feel can occur when you're conducting research? Just think about that. Could be funding, could be demographics. What if it's only 1 or 2 races that you can obtain feedback from, but you want to get as many races as possible so you have varying feedback, varying results, right? But just think on that. Another question to ponder on is, what are some biases when it comes to research? Circling around to ethics, you definitely want to make sure whatever data you receive, you don't have any biases toward it, and that you truly and transparently report whatever data you did receive from that research, right? So those are just a few things that have come up so far in our textbook. And remember, our textbook is on OpenStax. It is free and you can utilize it at any time. Psychology 2E is the name of it. It's listed in our syllabus. Some of you have reached out with questions. I appreciate that. And if anything else comes up, my door is always open. Just shoot me an email and I'll respond as soon as possible. That is it for the 10-minute lecture for today. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.